The views and opinions in this program are not those of CISA 7 or Spectrum.
Good evening, Leighton and Warren. Here. Here.
Here. Oh, yep.
It's good.
Yep.
Hey, welcome. Hi, is it easier to hear? Okay, okay. As noted, I'm here today to provide you with information that you as board members need to know with respect to Title IX. So as an overview, Title IX is the federal law that protects sex discrimination, including sexual harassment in a school district's education programs, activities, and operations. It protects students, employees, and other persons. As you may know, especially if you've seen me before, the new Title IX regulations were issued in May 2020, and they became effective in August of 2020. These new regulations differ from previous issuances from the Department of Education in that they are not guidance documents. These new regulations have the complaints and questions about prohibited harassment in a timely and effective manner. So let's take a quick review of how sexual harassment is defined through the specific lens of Title IX. As you may recall, the 2020 amendments to Title IX create specific definition of sexual harassment for the purposes of Title IX. Under Title IX, sexual harassment means conduct on the basis of sex within any educational program or activity of the district that also satisfies one or more of the following three categories. It's important to note that sexual harassment under Title IX also applies to discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The first category listed is often referred to as quid pro quo sexual harassment. Under Title IX, this is defined as an employee of the district has conditioned the provision of an aid, benefit, or service of the district on an individual's participation in unwelcome sexual conduct. An example of this type of harassment would be if a student or employee is led to believe that he or she must submit to unwelcome sexual conduct or communications in order to gain something in return, such as a grade, a promotion, a place on a sports team, or any educational or employment decision. The second category of sexual harassment would mean unwelcome conduct that creates a hostile environment. This is more specifically defined as unwelcome conduct determined by a reasonable person to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies a person access to the district's educational program or activity, including preventing a person to do their job. It's important to note that Title IX requires the conduct to be severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive to the point that it denies equal access. Under other laws, it's sufficient that the sexual harassment conduct is frequent or severe, such that it creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment or educational environment. The third category of sexual harassment, the third category of sexual harassment involves conduct that constitutes criminal sexual assault, criminal stalking, dating violence, or domestic violence, all as defined by other federal statutes. In order to provide you some context with respect to these terms without going into a lot of legalese, we can say that sexual assault can include anything from groping all the way up to the most serious forms of sexual assault, including rape. Stalking is defined as engaging in a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause the person to fear for his or her safety or the safety of others, or suffer substantial emotional distress. Dating violence and domestic violence are pretty much what you think they might be. So what is the significance of this unique definition for Title IX? Well, there are several of note, one of which is reporting and responding. With respect to sexual harassment, the district has numerous obligations under Title IX, including the obligation to intervene and respond when the district has knowledge of conduct that could constitute sexual harassment. The district's obligations to respond to sexual harassment generally do not depend on who the alleged person who is responsible to be the harasser. It could be a student, it could be an administrator, it could be another employee, or even a district authorized volunteer. Similarly, Title IX addresses student victims, employee victims, as well as other persons who may be victims of sexual harassment within an educational environment. As a result, district employees are expected to report any known or suspected incidents of prohibited harassment that could violate any non-discrimination law. You don't need to know what type of law it has been violated. You just need to know that there is a law that's been violated. The district administration will figure out that law. So the next thing is Title IX requires the district to adopt policies that prohibit sex discrimination and to adopt grievance procedures that provide for the prompt and equitable resolution of student and employee complaints involving violations of Title IX. The district is also required to adopt a detailed grievance procedure for addressing what are known as formal complaints of sexual harassment. This detailed grievance procedure, in other words, our full Title IX response, is only required to be implemented, however, when the allegations reflect conduct that, if proven, could constitute a violation of Title IX's unique definition of sexual harassment. It must be noted, however, that if Title IX does not apply, the district may still assess the conduct and process a report of sexual harassment under other legal standards or under other district policies or procedures. So we will address the conduct. It's also of note that the district is also required to provide students, employees, and others with notice of the district's Title IX obligations and policies. It should be noted that our Title IX policy is been approved and is on our website. Our notices are posted on the website as well, and they are found in the student expectation books and the employee handbook. So one of the most important pieces of information that you should remember from this training today is that every employee plays a critical role in our Title IX applications. And here's why. Title IX requires the district response anytime we have actual knowledge of sexual harassment or allegations of sexual harassment that could constitute a violation of Title IX. So what is actual knowledge? That includes knowledge or notice of any sexual harassment or allegations of sexual harassment to any district employee. And that would include you as members of our Board of Education. So it's not just notification to me, it's not just notification to an administrator, it's any single employee of the district. As a side note, I will mention that if the knowledge is only held by the alleged perpetrator, that's not knowledge on behalf of the district. It has to be somebody other than the person doing the harassment. However, if there's knowledge on behalf of any other employee at all, that will trigger our liability. So once an employee has notice of the sexual harassment, for example, they would have notice if the employee witnesses the harassment or another person such as a student or another employee or parent, some member of the public, reports an incident or allegation of sexual harassment to an employee. So that raises the important question. How can I, as the Title IX coordinator, initiate an appropriate response to sexual harassment if the only employee who has notice of the conduct is, for example, you as a board member? That's simple. You need to further report it. So I'm sure you're wondering why we're going through all of this now that we have a new administration in place. So let's talk about the action that President Biden has taken thus far and the effects it may have on Title IX. So on March 8th of 2021, President Biden issued an executive order guaranteeing an educational environment free from discrimination on the basis of sex, including sexual orientation or gender identity. This order produced two noteworthy actions that will have an impact on how the district responds to Title IX reports of sexual harassment. The first action I will talk about has an immediate impact on the district's response. This order came on the heels of the 2020 Supreme Court issued a decision, which is called Bostock versus Clayton County, in which the court held that the prohibition of discrimination because of sex under Title VII, now remember Title VII is employment discrimination, that the court ruled that discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation is covered on the reason for the basis of sex. So following this decision, many questions were then raised as to whether this holding would apply to Title IX. And then the U.S. Department of Education answered those questions when it issued its notice of interpretation on June 16, 2021, in which it indicated that Title IX's prohibition on the basis of sex will include sexual orientation and gender identity. Although I said this would have an immediate impact with respect to how we respond as a district, this notice of interpretation really did not create any change for our district, as we have been implementing that sexual orientation and gender identity. We have been considering that falling under Title IX already. So although it creates an immediate impact, not really for our district, because we already follow that rule. So now we come to the bigger and more complex actions of President Biden's March 8th executive order. Although President Biden, during his election campaign, promised that if elected, he would put a quick end to the 2020 Title IX regulations, it unfortunately will not be a simple task. Unlike the previous administrations who issued guidance documents on Title IX, the Trump administration used the rulemaking process to update Title IX. This makes it much harder for the Biden administration to implement change, as the new regulations have the force and effect of law and can't simply be discarded like the guidance documents can be. In other words, as much as some would like, these new regulations will not simply disappear, and there is no option but to comply with the regulations until any changes in the regulations are made or new regulations are issued. There are really two options then in which the Biden administration can effectuate change. One is to direct the agency in charge, which is the US Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, which is most people refer to as OCR, is tell them not to enforce the rules. The second option is to issue its own rule. Both of these are going to come with challenges. So first, let's say they direct OCR not to enforce the current rule. That would create liability issues for school districts. So although OCR can choose not to impose penalties on districts that are not in compliance with the new regulations, this provides zero protection from lawsuits. Because the new regulations are centered around due process protections, a district's choice not to comply with the laws could open them up to legal challenge and prove to be quite costly. Well, I could provide you with numerous court cases that support this claim. In fact, I was just at some training and I was given 114 pages of court documents with decisions related specifically to K-12, harassment and bullying. I'll give you two examples. The first is, even though the Department of Education has repeatedly said that the new regulations do not apply to conduct that occurred before implementation of the rule, a 2020 decision out of New York found differently and required the school district to follow prescriptive procedures under the new regulations for conduct that occurred before the effective date. This is a clear warning that courts could easily agree that districts must follow the new regulations, even if OCR says no. The second decision I will give you is a school district in Idaho recently settled a Title IX case wherein a former student claimed the school district failed to protect her from a school counselor who groomed her for a sexual relationship. The case settled only weeks before the jury was set to begin, and the price tag, $300,000. That's just the price tag of the settlement. That's not any legal fees. And I will say that in a brief purview of the 114 pages I was given, that $300 is one of the lower settlements. Many of them are well over the $1 million mark. And it appears that the Biden administration recognized that the uncertainty and chaos that would result from non-enforcement. And they are going to be, as I can tell, proceeding under the second option, which is to issue a new rule. Unfortunately, that means change will not happen anytime soon. Case in point, Trump also promised a new Title IX rule during his candidacy for presidency in 2016. However, his proposal for the new rule was not issued until November of 2018. Then the Department of Education has to go through the rulemaking process, which they spent the next 18 months reviewing nearly 125,000 comments it received. And then the rule finally became effective only 5 months before the end of his term. So evidence that the Biden administration will be heading down the path of issuing a new rule came on April 16th, or April 6th, 2021, when OCR launched a comprehensive review to fulfill his March 8th executive order. In support of this review, they scheduled public hearings seeking input from stakeholders on what changes should be made to Title IX. The public hearings were held June 7th through June 11th. Speakers were given a 5-minute slot. I had heard on June 4th, which was before these even occurred, that there were over 700 people signed up for 600 slots. They also allowed written comments to be submitted. Again, as of June 4th, the week before, there were over 15,000 written comments submitted. And with written comments being able to be submitted through June 11th, I'm sure there were many, many more. Just recently, in an update to the Department of Education's website, the Biden administration has said they set a target date for May 2022 for releasing its proposal to any new amendments. Keep in mind, this is just a target date. It's not a mandatory date. Assuming that they are lucky and are able to meet their target date, then they have to follow the standard notice and comment procedure. This would mean that the earliest that any changes to the regulations would be finalized and effective would be sometime during the 22-23 school year. So until any new regulations are effective, OCR has made it clear that the 2020 amendments remain in place. Again, the district must comply with the current regulations as they carry the force and effective law. We have no choice other than to put aside a liability issue. So how does this whole Title IX issue apply specifically to you as members of the Board of Education? You have two very critical roles. One, because the district is required to respond to any report or complaint of sexual harassment, it is worth emphasizing one more time that employee reporting of possible sexual harassment is critical. As a district employee, your knowledge of conduct that could constitute sexual harassment under Title IX triggers the district's obligation to respond. So, and we must respond in a manner that also complies with Title IX. So in many cases, the only way that I'm going to know, or any other administrator is going to know, that you have knowledge or were made aware of a situation is that you must report the relevant information to me, or at least to another administrator. Because you have to remember that Title IX protections apply not just to students, but they now apply to employees as well. The second critical role you face as a member of the Board of Education is reviewing an expulsion decision. And in that role, you're determining whether to confirm, reverse, or modify the recommended expulsion order. So as part of the Title IX grievance process, it is possible that the decision maker that we have in place as a team member could make a determination that the respondent engaged in conduct that violated Title IX, and the appropriate sanction would be a referral for expulsion. Because only the board can order expulsion, this recommendation would trigger the need for an expulsion hearing before our independent hearing officer. And then in order for you to effectively review any recommendation of an independent hearing officer that involved a Title IX matter, it's crucial that you as board members are knowledgeable of what constitutes Title IX and the district's procedures in how we respond to Title IX. So you have to remember that the district must presume that a respondent is not responsible for the alleged conduct until a determination is made regarding responsibility under Title IX. In other words, the district cannot impose any disciplinary action against the respondent until the district completes its formal Title IX grievance process and makes a determination that the respondent engaged in conduct that violated Title IX. The expulsion would be part of that formal grievance process, and you would be an extension of that. As a quick reminder, included in the slides is a list of all of our applicable Board of Education policies. Be good as a review. We're also required to provide the Title IX notice on the website. It's also linked in for there. It's under our legal notifications for you to review as well. As always, if you have any questions, my contact information is on the slide. You know where to find me. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm always happy to talk through situations. And thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Ellen. Oh, you have a question? Go ahead, Brenda.
I know the Title IX rules, when they went into effect last year, turned this process became much more onerous and complicated and difficult. Could you just give us sort of a high-level overview of the Biden changes, administration changes that you're referring to, what in general, what kinds of changes would you be hoping to see?
There are no, they haven't brought out what changes they want to put forward. There's a lot of speculation out there. There are people that believe that it will be entirely repealed, although that is not the popular belief. The popular belief is that they are going to keep some of this, especially the due process rights for the respondent. Where I believe the changes are going to come, and this is, just a guess from what I'm hearing on my national listserv, is right now, part of the process is you have to give the information. The respondent gets the information of who the complainant is. There is no protection on that for privacy anymore. So that I believe is going to stay. However, I think some of the time limits that they've imposed, where you have to give them 10 minutes to look at, or 10 days to look at the evidence, then another 10 days to review the investigation report, then another question and answer period, and then an appeal period for the final determination. I think some of those timeframes are either going to be combined or shortened. That's at best where I think that they are going to go. But I do believe that if it, in my feeling is that some of the basic tenets of the new proposed will remain in place.
All right, any other questions for Ellen? All right, with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn the special board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, special board meeting adjourns. We'll take a 5-minute break before we kick our regular board meeting. All right, thank you, Josh. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our August regular school board meeting. We took roll call earlier during a special session. All 7 board members were present. I also like to point out that we are joined by Superintendent Steve Murley, along with members of his cabinet. Tonight, the ICSC Intercity Student Council is represented by Megan Jonnet, the VP from Preble, and she's joining us virtually. We will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and then to wrap up our opening activities, we have our mission statement, which tonight will be read by Ms. Nancy Welsh.
We educate all students to be college, career, and community ready, inspired to succeed in our diverse world.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, moving on to the open forum portion. First, we have our Intercity Student Council report, and that will be given by Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan, and like he said, I'm the Vice President of Intercity Student Council. It's really hard to believe that we're already coming up on the last days of the second session of summer school, and registration for the 2021-2022 school year is already starting. A few positive things that are going on in the high schools lately are that the choral departments of the Green Bay Area Public School District are proud to share their performance of Always Keep This Close by Zachary Moore. This work is dedicated to East, Preble, Southwest, and West High School in Green Bay in honor of Miss Sarah Hollab. Southwest High School's golfer Emma Cunningham shot a 90 at Thornberry Creek in the Optimist International District Qualifier and was featured in the Press Times on July 11th, 2021. Congratulations to Preble High School trap shoot team members Aspen Kent, Connor Krupp, and Zach Jenquin, who competed at Nationals in Mason, Michigan. Connor was recognized for a 25 straight patch and finished 523rd of 1,676 participants. East High's Zach Markhart, the agricultural science classes, and East High's FFA for donating close to 10 pounds of white fish fillets to the Eats for East Food Pantry. And finally, congratulations to Jack Hemry from West High School for being honored as a 12-season athlete. Each year, Jack has participated in football, basketball, and track. In addition, he managed to be an active in the 3 sports and stay successful as a student.
And thank you so much for that update. We really appreciate it. All right. Moving on to the recognition. Do we have a recognition? Okay. Then moving on to the public forum, we have 2 people who are registered to speak. One requested a phone call, and so we'll take care of that. Another person is here in person. So, Josh, are you prepared to? There we go. Is Edward there? Edward? Oh, there he is.
Yes, sir.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to call in. If you could start by introducing yourself and giving us your address, you then have 5 minutes to read your comments.
Yes, I'm Edward Jensen. I live at 541 Alpine Drive in Green Bay. I was just asking about whether the district uses any kind or any form of critical race theory in its educational policies. And the president of the board assured me that no. But I want to know about this Hanover research. Is there a cost to that thing? Is there reports that the public can see? Is there an evaluation, recommendations? Because of your 3 values that you have: engagement, equity, and excellence. I want to know how you define equity and how you measure it. And if you could get back to me on that, I would appreciate it.
Edward, we definitely will have somebody follow up as soon as possible and answer those questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to call.
Bye.
Bye. All right, and then we have 1 public participation registration form. Jan Larson. Jan, if I don't know, maybe I should give you this microphone.
Hello, people of the board and all of you great folks watching online. My name is Jan Larson. I live on Sitka Street in Green Bay. I have 2 children in the district. And I'd love you, please give us the option to unmask our kids. I would like to see parents and our children surveyed about masking of our children. Appleton Districts does not have a virtual option for students, yet they are also unmasked, or they have the option to be unmasked. We have the online version. We're forcing masks, mandating masks, whatever you want to call it. And you guys can if people feel it is unsafe to send their children to school, then they have that virtual option. Please give us the chance to unmask our children. Please survey the parents and our students 4 or more times a year so we can see if the parents' opinions change over time. Please unmask our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jan. All right, moving on in the agenda, our consent agenda. Is there a motion? Oh, sorry, first, are there any items on the consent agenda anyone would like removed for discussion? All right, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. And that moves our consent agenda. Then we go on to presentations. We have 2 presentations tonight. The first is our legislative update, and I think we'll start with Superintendent Steve Merle.
Thank you, Eric. One major point for us tonight. Last week, we had a conversation with representatives from the Department of Public Instruction and the School Superintendents Association. They'd been out in Washington, D.C., conferred with the U.S. Department of Education. You'll remember in one of our earlier updates, we expressed some concern about the state meeting the maintenance of equity requirement for the ESSER funding. They received assurances while they were out there that the U.S. Department of Education is not going to contest either maintenance of effort or maintenance of equity provisions that would apply to the budget that was recently passed by the Wisconsin State Legislature and signed by the governor. That's very important for us because that then means that we can move forward with our planning for allocation and eventual expenditure of those dollars that were allocated to us through the 3 streams in ESSER. So we will begin that planning process in earnest, knowing that we are now going to be eligible for full reimbursement from the federal government for that. So as we move forward, expect to see regular reports from us. One will be coming out next week at the Operations Committee meeting with an update on CARES funding. That was that first stream. And then you'll see additional information coming forward soon regarding obligations for future funding. So good news from us from the U.S. Department of Education.
Any questions on the legislative update? All right, then we will move on to our employee benefits update. We've got some representatives with us virtually. We have Lori Myron here. Lori, we should get you a chair up there. That's not very. All right, sounds good. Perfect. Cindy and Beck, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours. Oh, Cindy, you're on mute.
Sorry about that Zoom 101, right? Thank you for having us this evening. I'm like you, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Cindy Van Asten. I'm a senior account executive and a partner at M3. Beck, you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening. I'm Beck Krasinski. I work here in our Green Bay office as an account executive and also as the director of our education and government practice for employee benefits for our agency.
Great. Josh, are you going to pull the presentation up for us?
Beth is going to pull. There we go.
Perfect. If I can operate it, I can really go to slide 2, or if you want to bring slide 2 up, that would be great. For those of you who don't know us, M3 is a privately held insurance agency in the state of Wisconsin. We have 6 offices in Wisconsin and 1 in Rockford, Illinois. We've been working with the Green Bay School District since 2013. Tonight, we would like to tell you a little bit more about M3 and talk about our partnership, review the medical plan performance. We just ended the plan year of 2020 through 2021. We'd like to share with you how the benefit strategies that we implemented thus far are going, and then share with you what our key strategic initiatives are going into the 21-22 plan year. So the M3 partnership, we've been working in partnership with your Human Resources and Risk Management Department since 2013. Many of our services that I'm going to talk about here are certainly not limited to everything we do, but some of the highlights are the strategic planning that we do, supporting the Benefit Advisory Committee. We spend a lot of time with data analytics and really looking to understand what drives the health of the population and what relationships we can continue to foster and partner with in the community in supporting the member population. We help to manage the pharmacy benefit company as well, which is CVS National Cooperative. We provide client and customer service support for the carriers, working with your members, as well as working with the administrative staff. We help in drafting and creating communication materials that go out. And then we also help to support the personal health assessments, the wellness assessments, and the athletic training that happens with the students. And although the athletic training is a student athlete provided service, we really look to integrate those services and understand where there's an opportunity for employees to tap in when those trainers are available. Next slide.
So M3 serves over 250 school districts in the state of Wisconsin, and our specialization in education and government has been recognized for that focus and commitment to the public space by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards as an endorsed agency. In addition, we're actively engaged with a variety of other state associations that serve our public schools. We dedicate resources specifically for our public sector clients in both our business insurance, risk management, and our employee benefits teams. Thank you. All right, shown on this slide is a summary of the health and dental plan performance for the most recently completed plan year, which ended on June 30th. The enrollment is broken down by plan tier that you can see on the left-hand side, and also by active or retiree status, as well as the plan coverage type. A couple highlights from that first section of the chart. There were 2,872 total contracts combining all of the single, employee, spouse, employee, children, and family contracts, with the largest number of folks being insured on a single plan. The active plan has the most enrollments, more than the retirees, as we would expect, and your $500 plan, $500 deductible plan has the most enrollments. The dental plan has a total of 3,857 folks enrolled during the most recently completed plan year. The funding ratio of both the health and the dental plans ended at 98%, meaning that there were slightly lower plan costs than what were projected for that year. The costs are still well below the public sector benchmark in both health and dental, as you can see with the public sector benchmark being listed in the last row on both the left side and the right side, left being the health plan, right being the dental plan. Retiree costs are significantly reduced from last year, and the major driver for the costs among the active population this year were those high-cost claimants with multiple cancer claims from folks that are insured on the health plan.
Before we leave that page, sorry about that, Josh, I want to just point out on the far left under all combined, if you go halfway into the middle section there, you'll see total plan costs, projected plan costs, dollar difference, Prevea and Bellin, and funding ratio. On this document, we did in 2019 create a special relationship directly with Bellin and with Prevea for primary care services. We'll talk about that a little further on, but for purposes of this document, we call out what those costs were on a direct basis, as those costs do not flow through the health plan and they're paid out directly out of that same pot of money that the health insurance claims are paid out of, but it is a separate fund. So when you look at it, it shows up under the all combined that $452,553 was for the direct services of primary care, urgent care, and physical therapy, specifically through Bellin and Prevea Health Services. The next slide is a dashboard, which is very busy. We recognize it's very busy. We're trying to give you an at a glance, if you will, look at what is happening in the health plan. This data set is actually from the July 1 of 2019 through June 30 of 2020, and it is in comparison to the data from 2018 through 2019. In the future, we'll look to bring you maybe updates 2 times a year or more frequently if you wish. That'll give you more relevant data. But as the plan just ended June 30th for 2021, there's a lag in pulling that data. So in this data set, you'll notice that in the enrollment, our population did go down slightly. Our male population makes up 42%, and our female population makes up 58%. And then you'll notice below the enrollment tiers, again, down slightly, but the employee only, employee spouse, the employee children, and then the family enrollment. The average cost per employee per year is $15,452. That is down slightly from the prior year, and it is significantly lower than the employee public sector benchmark of $17,581. The major diagnostic categories that we see coming through the plan in this plan year are the top 5 are listed here. Next to them, you'll see where they were in ranking in the prior 12-month set. The thing of note here is that you'll notice that neoplasms, cancers, are 4 out of your top 5 in this data set, where in the prior year that ranked 10th. That's a 58% hike up in cancers in that 2019-2020 plan year. And then the skin breast conditions is up 12% over that prior year. The top middle section is really just showing you a breakout of that just shy of $37 million spend, broken down between the employee, the spouse, the dependents, and then the retirees on the plan. Our top 5 providers in the plan has shifted a little bit. The reason they're in black is it's not a good nor a bad, but want to show you where the plan dollars are being spent. And in the next slide, in a minute, we'll talk about where your work comp dollars are going in relationship as well. But Bellin, St. Vincent's, Prevea, St. Mary's end up in your top 5, and Freighter right now is in your top 5. That is really specifically because of some of the high cost cancer conditions that were in the plan in this plan year. On the top right, there was just a $7.5 million spend in pharmacy, down slightly from the prior year. Of that total spend, your members' portion was $347,000. The biggest takeaway from this section here is that 85% of the pharmacy that goes out is generic, which accounts for 18% of your total spend, while 15% is brand medication, accounts for 82% of the total spend. So in our strategic look going forward in our data analytics, we continue to monitor and understand what's happening in the specialty world, making sure that members have what they need, but that we are able to purchase it and find it at the best cost alternative. The top 5 prescriptions in utilization are anti-inflammatories, anti-diabetics, dermatologics or skin-related medications, anti-cancer medications, and then bronchial asthmatic medications. In the parentheses next to them is just noting where they fell in the top 5 ranking in the prior year. So 4 of your top medications have remained, and it would make sense here that we see the anti-cancer medications on the rise, as we saw a rise in our major diagnostic categories of cancer conditions as well. In the preventative screening area, we see a downward tick of annual preventative exams, mammography screenings, and colonoscopies. Some of this is due to COVID. So COVID, when it hit in March of 20, we really saw preventative screenings go down. The other thing that we want to be cautious and understand is that many times in employers who offer health risk assessments, sometimes we will see a decline in preventative annual exams, as some may choose to take the evaluation of their risk assessment and determine they are not going to get an annual exam. Not making judgment on there, however, we do see that happen. And the top 5 chronic conditions that running through the plan: hypertension, diabetes, asthma, coronary artery disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. Well, these are all showing lower in costs over previous year. We also know in this plan year that, again, there was some impact to COVID. So some of those conditions may not have been seeking the treatment in a clinical provider setting as they may have pre-COVID. So again, really high level. I want to just pause to make sure there's no questions.
I think we're good, Cindy. Keep going. Thanks.
Okay, the next data set, again, a busy screen, is on a wellness summary. And here we're looking to revamp this and continued on our scorecard that we'll talk about next. But here we're just looking year over year at the services we put in place with Bellin and Prevea. As just a reminder, it was March of 2019 when we began the services with Bellin for physical therapy, primary care, and labs that go with those visits. And then July of 2019 that we began that relationship with Prevea. At the time of implementing these plans, Bellin's urgent care was not part of the arrangement. And since then, Bellin has brought their urgent care to the table, and we continue to evaluate that and go forward. But you see, the physical therapy, urgent care, primary care, and labs, we are really, just from a straight purchasing standpoint, we're purchasing these for less than half of what it would be running through the medical health plan. So there are some hard dollar savings from that perspective. What this document does not capture today is the savings impact on removing any access barriers that folks may have had or cost barriers. When your member population access Bellin and Prevea for the primary care and urgent care services, it's at a no out-of-pocket cost to the member. And the physical therapy comes with a no referral process and a $10 copay for access to physical therapy. So we really do believe that folks are getting the care they need, where they need it, as soon as they need it, and that is helping achieve a higher optimum care plan for your members. The personal health assessments below that is showing the 2021 plan year compared to 2019, 2020. The first portion is showing the employee participants in each of those years, the spouses that participated, and their average score. So you notice the average score went up from 78 to 79, and the district has a higher than Helix national average in overall scoring. The 5 risk factors, the top 5 risk factors in there: nicotine, weight, blood pressure, glucose, and triglycerides. The total points that are awarded in each of those categories, and then the points in an aggregate that the population got 2019 over 2020. In all categories, if it did not remain the same, there was a slight tick upwards. We would assume the population's moving in the right direction from that. There are outreach letters that are sent to any members that are at risk for nicotine or that fall into a moderate or high cardiac area. Those letters are sent direct to patients from Bellin Health. They are offered tobacco cessation courses, as well as the opportunity to get a free heart calcium screening. You see on the very bottom there how many members were offered the free heart calcium screenings in the 2020-21 plan year versus how many completed them compared to the 19-20 plan year. Now here again, we're relatively confident that COVID has had some impact, but there is opportunity for us to continue to educate members on the resources available to them. On the right side of the page, we're looking at your 2019-2020 work comp. 19-20 plan year compared to 18-19 plan year. Again, there's some COVID impact to what happened in the 19-20 plan year, and the top 5 conditions in that arena. What we really want to watch and understand in the top 5 conditions area, as well as the top provider area, is when we are building strategies, particularly maybe around musculoskeletal functionality. What happens is you see is strain and sprains. A lot of these things sometimes fall into the musculoskeletal, or are they falling into the access? So how to get people at the right place. And when we are talking to the provider delivery systems that we're partnering with, really looking to understand the revenues going into those systems as we work to negotiate the best financial terms for offering. What you'll notice here also is in that 2018-19 plan year, you'll see Aurora Baycare, not much Aurora Baycare in the 19-20 plan year. As of today, it's not part of the Aurora Baycare program to do a lot of direct to employer relationships. They run through your health plan, and at this point in time, their systems aren't set up, and that's not a direction they are moving toward. While they do tell us that they are continuing to work toward that, a lot of it has to do with their EPIC and technology programming. On the bottom, we're looking at your EAP, and you'll notice the EAP in 2019 to 2020, 18-19 was down some. And if you look below, your anxiety, marital relationship, depression, family, child, and job stress are the top 5, very similar to the national average. The national average is at 3.6, considerably lower than the district's utilization here. A lot of that is contributed to the fact that the EAP is embedded and incentivized into your medical plan, as we really want to encourage folks to use the EAP, work to get a treatment plan, and work to have their needs met. So we see a higher than national average utilization. This next slide is a scorecard. As we develop strategies and bring strategies to you, we are really working to measure the impact and success of those strategies. On the scorecard, on the far left, the preventative screenings, I talked about this a little earlier. You can see here, while there were 3,009 that did not complete a preventative screening, the UMR norm is 33.9%, and the district's average number at 39.3 is still above their norm. The breast cancer screenings at 50%, you see the UMR norm is at 37.8, and the colorectal screenings, districts at 13.5 compared to 14.3. We continue to look at this as an initiative going forward and working on strategy to communicate to members and help them consider going in and getting those services done. In October of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, we implemented what's called Real Appeal. You may recall it's a digital weight management behavioral program. There were 342 employees that enrolled through June 30th of 21. 87% of those 342 would have had factors that are considered at risk for abnormal weight. The members who lost weight on that plan were 207 for a total of 2,038 pounds. The satisfaction scores by the member surveys were 4.7 out of 5. And the estimated cost savings on this program of $170,000 is taking into consideration for those folks that lost weight. They also lowered some of their risk factors, well, whether that be elevated blood pressure and or cholesterol and opportunities for well-being. And the top middle is more on the EAP that we talked about on that last slide at that 11.92 compared to national average. And we continue to promote that and promote all of these within the Benefit Advisory Committee. The Teledoc program was another program that we implemented October 1st in the middle of the pandemic. This program allows members, once registered, a really fast and easy alternative 24/7 to some acute chronic needs. The total registrations between October 1st and June 30th were 593. There was a total of 163 visits for general health, 90 visits for mental health, and 62 visits for dermatological visits. We make note on here there were 315 visits. There is a cost per employee per month for this service. And so we just show that the break-even point was 96 consults for this service to break even in a 12-month period, where there were 315. And that's really measured by members sharing if they did not have access to this tele, what would they have done? Would they have done nothing? Would they have gone in to the primary care visit, would they have gone into urgent care or emergency room? This program has received high satisfaction scores also from the member utilization. On the bottom, I won't jump a whole lot into this, but this is just, again, that primary care direct. Physical therapy in 1920 versus 2021 through April. Urgent care, primary care, and then immunizations and labs. We continue to promote this again as a remove access barriers and allow folks to get in anywhere there's a primary clinic within Belen and Purveya where they might live or use. Emergency room utilization. Here we're really measuring emergency versus non-emergency. Total visits were 1,237, and of those, 272 would have been deemed non-emergent. The non-emergent reasons, again, are based off of a procedure code that's submitted from the medical systems. Acute upper respiratory infection, migraines, urinary tract infection, low back pain, and pain in the right knee. The average cost for emergency room visit is $1,707, and UMR's norm is $1,811. That would lead us to think that some of those visits that are going in were obviously lower cost emergency room visits. And there's a multitude of reasons why a person may have chose the ER when they did. What we're really trying to do here is measure the opportunity again to get people resources for the right care at the right time, bringing them into the most cost-effective way as possible as well. Any
so Cindy has given
us.
us.
Okay.
All right. Cindy has given us a really nice comprehensive summary of a variety of different data points that we utilize when we're developing our strategies and initiatives together and in partnership with your benefits team here within the district. So a few things that we're working on in the upcoming year. We will continue to enhance our communication strategies and engage with the Benefit Advisory Committee. That's a group of your staff and your retirees along with your leadership that get together on a periodic basis to discuss the employee benefit offerings, look at enhancements, and look at opportunities to improve the performance of the plan, as well as the value that it brings to your employees. We'll also continue to evaluate the program itself and continue to evolve. That could happen through incentive opportunities, looking at the wellness programming, continuing to evaluate the relationship with the local provider delivery systems and those near site clinics, looking at the personal health assessments and program analysis of that. We are going to be going to RFP for that service this fall. We'll continue with the education programs and continue to enhance those as well, in addition to providing educational opportunities for our retirees and helping them to understand what options are available to them, both directly from the Green Bay Area Public School District, but also opportunities available because of the partnership with M3. We will continue to look at opportunities to increase preventive screenings and those annual exams, and then reducing the true non-true ER. A lot of the things that you see on this list are things that we've chosen to highlight in our data that we shared with you this evening. And we continue to work with the benefits team here in the district to add to those list of strategies and initiatives so that we can report back based on the progress that we've made. Are there any questions that you have this evening?
Doesn't look like there's any questions, Beck and Cindy. Just want to say thank you for coming in again and providing this information. Having heard the presentation in prior years, it's always very insightful to learn about how the plan is performing and how our staff are utilizing, obviously, the health-related services. So thank you for taking the time to walk us through that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Opportunity.
Yep. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You as well.
All right, that jumps us into the action items. We have 5 items tonight, as I understand it. Laura McCoy will read the motions if we can get a second, and then we'll throw it back to Superintendent Murley to provide any context there and certainly give board members an opportunity to ask questions. So we'll go to item A, student academic standards.
I move that pursuant to Wisconsin Stat Section 120 dot 1 parent 13 parent B, the list and description of the 2021-22 student academic standards for the areas of mathematics, science, reading and writing, geography, and history as presented, and with said academic standards constituting the board adopted standards that were required under WIS Stat Section 118.30 parent 1G parent A be approved.
I'll second.
So as you read through that, especially I would pay attention to that second page. You'll notice that this is a requirement that we do annually. The standards that are referenced there are directly linked to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction website. You can see that they correlate to either Wisconsin model standards or the Common Core state standards that have been adopted by the state of Wisconsin and the Department of Public Instruction.
Any specific questions for Steve or his team on any of this? Go ahead, Nancy.
How did you choose to follow Wisconsin versus the Common Core?
Vicki, if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to. The Common Core are actually adopted by the state of Wisconsin and Department of Public Instruction. And so what we've done essentially is elected to follow the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction standards, and this gives you the root source for their standards.
Good.
Okay.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, then Beth, I think we're set to vote.
All votes have been entered. The motion has carried. All board members have voted in favor.
All right, motion carries 7-0. That takes us to item B, suspension of board policies for graduation requirements related to COVID-19 for school years 2021, 22, and 22, 23.
I move that the resolution regarding the suspension of board policies for graduation requirements related to COVID-19 for the 2021-22 and 2022-23 school years as presented be approved.
I'll second.
Thank you. And I would draw attention to the bottom of page 2 on there. What we're proposing is that there be a laddered return to the Green Bay requirements for graduation. A reminder that our district requirements supersede those of the state and exceed their minimum. What this ladder does then is it allows us the opportunity to recognize the challenges that our incoming seniors who were juniors last year and our incoming juniors who were sophomores last year may have had as they went through the pandemic and the challenges that we faced last year, and gives them that opportunity to ensure that they have a smooth path to graduation.
Any specific questions on that? Getting back to sort of where we've been, I think the laddered approach is a good one. All right, Beth, I think we're ready to vote.
All votes have been entered. The motion has carried. All board members have voted in favor.
All right, motion carries 7-0. That takes us to item C, the request to use Head Start grant funding for an addition at the Head Start Learning Center.
I move that the request to use Head Start grant funding for an addition at the Head Start Learning Center as presented be approved.
I'll second.
All right, and if you note there in that first paragraph, a reminder that Head Start exists as a separate entity governed by separate rules under the federal government and therefore qualify for an independent stream of funding through the CARES Act and the American Recovery Plan. What this does is allows us to access those funds and to use those for the physical expansion at Head Start. If you read through there, you'll see that it provides us the opportunity to provide additional children's therapy services after we go through that expansion and the conversion there. We think that will provide great benefit to the students and the families here in the greater Green Bay area.
I just want to add that Nancy and I are the liaisons to Head Start, and we meet every month and have listened to Sally and her team tell us about their needs in this area and how excited they are that they're going to be able to expand. It will really help with social distancing and also services for their little tiny students, and they're pretty excited about it. So I just wanted to share that.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, and there's, just make sure I'm understanding this correctly, there's a, looks like around 80% of this is federal funding, additional separate funding outside the district budget, is that right?
That's correct. And these dollars exist outside our district CARES and ESSER streams. They're separate from that.
All right, any other questions? All right, Beth, we're set to vote.
All votes have been entered. The motion has carried. All board members have voted in favor.
All right, motion carries 7-0. Item D, amendment to the agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Green Bay Area Public School District.
I move that the addendum to the agreement between the City of Green Bay and the Green Bay Area Public School District as presented be approved.
Second.
We are very fortunate. We've got a wonderful group of school resource officers. A reminder that they are sworn officers of the Green Bay Police Department. As such, as the Green Bay Police Department moves to a policy on body worn cameras, Melissa very graciously went through the process of working with the Green Bay PD to make sure that their departmental policy would conform to the issues that we have in the school district, in particular as they pertain to records that are generated through any activation of those cameras. We're confident that the policy that's in front of you now provides the Green Bay Police Department the opportunity to meet all of their departmental expectations with the resource officers that are in our school, and for us as a school district to protect the privacy of the students in the schools.
Any questions on this amendment? Addendum, I should say. Go ahead, Andrew.
I'll vote yes on this. I would have, as I mentioned, and similar to what I was talking about at the last meeting, I would have a preference for a little bit more specific language about the body cameras generally being activated if a school context becomes a law enforcement context. I know there's emergencies that could prevent that, but I would prefer us to be a bit more directive on that. We are the funders of this. I understand that we are the funders of these officers. We pay all of the costs of the officers. That being said, there is policy existing, GBPD policy, that says that in almost all circumstances they need to get activated. I would have preferred a little more proactive, but it's still a positive development, and I'll vote yes.
All right, any other comments? All right, Beth, we're set to vote.
All votes have been entered. The motion has carried with all board members voting in favor.
All right, motion carries 7-0, and that takes us to E, COVID-19 related leave for the 2021-22 school year.
I move that the Board of Education adopts the board resolution related to COVID-19 for the 2021-2022 school year for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic, to modify the employee handbook to provide COVID-19 related leave as presented be approved.
Second.
The change in front of you essentially gives us the opportunity to go back and utilize a practice that we used last year. We recognize that many of our staff will be vaccinated. However, there is some potential that those who are vaccinated may be put in a position where they have to quarantine. As such, they've done what we've asked them to do, which is to ensure that they're vaccinated to provide for the greatest safety for our students. If indeed, after having done that, they may be required to quarantine, this would afford them the opportunity to access sick leave through a district bank as opposed to having to use it from their personal bank. We think that that is both a responsible thing to do and a good incentive to ensure that our staff are working hard towards getting their vaccines.
All right, any questions on this policy modification? Go ahead, Laura.
I just wanted a little more clarification on section A, number 3. Employees who, for reasons of a sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance, refuse to obtain the COVID-19 vaccination pursuant to the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. How does that work? How does somebody, that just seems like a really touchy area. I'm just wondering how the district is going to determine if it's a sincerely held religious belief or practice. I did some Googling, but I would like legal opinion. Thank you.
Unless you want to answer that, Steve.
You got rid of that microphone
Okay.
quickly.
Thanks for asking that, Laura. The Title VII doesn't require a very formal procedure. An employee would submit a statement as to what is their reasonably held belief, and then the district would evaluate that, and the district has an opportunity to reach out to the employee's religious leader if there's questions. But it's a pretty standard process, and our HR department is equipped to be able to evaluate those requests.
Thank you.
Andrew?
And just for people who are just catching the meeting online, this has, if an employee were to just make a personal choice to not get vaccinated, this is about access to extra leave. No one's forced to, no one can, but you would be within your regular sick leave then if you contract your regular sick leave policies, if you contracted COVID, if you chose not to take the vaccine. This gives extra leave if you can't take the vaccine or other categories, correct?
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification, Andrew. Any other questions? All right, Beth, we are all set to vote.
All votes have been entered. The motion has carried with all board members voting in favor.
All right, motion carries 7-0. That takes us to agenda setting. You can see on the attachment our schedule for the rest of the month. Next Monday, we have a policy and governance committee meeting from 4 to 6. There is an operations committee meeting from 6 to 8. I do know that in that operations committee meeting, one of the agenda items among a few is the fall planning return to learn update. So the committee will be getting an update on everything that our district is planning in terms of bringing our students back 5 days a week in a safe environment. If there is anything that comes out of either policy and governance or operations that has some urgency before we are scheduled to meet again, which is obviously after the school year starts September 13th. So if anything comes out of either of those meetings, we could look at scheduling a special meeting before the start of the school year. That's not currently on that calendar. You can also see August 23rd, education, and then potential work sessions are held there. Our next regularly scheduled full board meeting is Monday, September 13th. Any questions on that or any other agenda items? Oh, I saw Andrew first, and then we'll go to Laura.
Yeah, I've had some questions about what is the plan for next fall if we have exposure in a classroom causing quarantines, and some discussion about that. With that, is that a topic that will be addressed in the operations committee?
It will. That's a great question, Andrew. We'll cover things like screeners, face coverings, quarantine issues for both students and staff, both vaccinated and unvaccinated. We'll also be looking at issues regarding in-person meetings, professional development, travel. We'll be talking about athletics, spectators at those events, field trips for kids. We'll also be looking at visitors in the school and potential external use of facilities. And then the cleaning protocols that we'll be using and the protocols that will be used in food service. So all of those will be covered at that.
Okay, so specifically, if what happens if a classroom's teacher is quarantined, and also what happens if one or several kids within a classroom or a building, that will all be covered as part of this, all on the agenda?
Yes, it is.
So just as a reminder, certainly for those committee meetings, we have 3 board members who are serving on that committee. Anyone is able to attend. If another board member chooses to attend, you're a member of the audience, and the committee members will coordinate that meeting along with members of the cabinet. Laura, did you have?
Yeah, I was just wondering if these meetings will be live streamed on YouTube. I know previous one was not, but I wasn't sure if that was the case for all of these, if that's an option.
It is recorded. It is not live streamed.
Okay.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Brenda, I didn't see you.
Beth, can you send us, there was a list of subs that alternates for these committee meetings. I have a committee meeting coming up that I'm not going to be able to make.
Absolutely, I can reshare that out.
All right. Not seeing any other comments. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that concludes our August regular board meeting.
You have been watching the Green Bay Area Public School District's Board of Education meeting. Please visit the school district's website, www.gbaps.org, to view the program again. If you cannot fully access the information on this video, please let us know the accessibility issue you are having by calling 920-448-2025 or by email at communications@gbaps.org. We will try to provide the information to you in an alternative format and/or make the necessary improvements to make the information accessible.